It's about being fearless, about trying things.
The power of an image, the power of a great story.
For Condé Nast, we have to lead, we can't follow. The good thing about the future is you never know what's coming.
Okay.
You can run that, right?
Fashion is a global language.
It's all about now. We are living a cinematographic era.
Cultural content now is truly global.
We're telling stories without borders. It's about access. It's about going places where audiences can't go otherwise.
The more specific you can be, the more it becomes a human story.
A multitude of voices is better than one single voice.
Every story is a technology story.
From a story-first perspective.
Day and night through all these different channels.
Does it need to have a Twitter moment?
That should be a post and it should go up tomorrow.
House tours in VR.
I have been waiting for this day for my entire life, so.
The sky's the limit.
You have this amazing landscape into which you can paint all your ideas.
What it takes is passion. That's it.
We want to see not just where the culture is, but where the culture is headed.
It's our job to chronicle our times and to even influence our times. To be superb, to be accurate, to be beautiful, to be funny.
To hold power accountable.
To celebrate change.
We take our responsibility very seriously.
We are all connected.
Creativity,
Curiosity.
Diversity.
Sustainability.
And respect. The voice we have together is simply unparalleled.
Hi, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we talk about data. Condé Nast and AdTech, our partners in this initiative, are excited to present this to you, and we hope you find the sessions insightful. Let's start at the top, and what our world has been talking about for several months now: data privacy and the end of the third-party cookie. Cookies have been the backbone of the open internet, but the clock is ticking on third-party cookies. And we need to plan for the disruption tomorrow by rethinking data strategies today. The global demand for privacy is one of the most consequential consumer dynamics at play today. Across the world, 91% of consumers are concerned about the amount of data that companies can collect about them, and 42% have taken steps to reduce the amount of data they share online. In the light of this desire for increased privacy, most technology platforms have recently implemented or announced restrictions around data collection and user tracking through their web browsers and operating systems. For brands and the advertising industry, the magnitude of this evolution is massive. In the short term, it is undoubtedly a source of conundrums for many marketers and publishers. Processes, ways of working, legal compliance efforts, technology stacks, consumer data strategies, and even business models must be reviewed and rethought to limit business disruption. Yet, in the long term, it offers a unique opportunity to rebuild trust between brands and consumers around the data issue. Success will hinge on increasing efforts to educate audiences and defining a right value exchange that works for all. In the midst of sensationalist headlines, technical solutions are still being worked out. And we have a panel of experts today who will discuss how they are looking at the future. We have a packed agenda for you. And to kick things off, I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague Alex Kuruvilla. Alex has had a ringside seat to the evolution of the Condé Nast business in India, from setting the benchmarks for the industry as a publisher to building India's largest premium fashion and lifestyle network. So let's go straight over to Alex.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Data. The last time we met, we discussed why share of culture is an important metric for brands to measure and own. Today, we turn our focus to data, more specifically, data partnerships in a privacy first world. I'm confident that today's session and the discussions that follow will be thought provoking and help you create exceptional consumer experiences. At Condé Nast, it is our dedication to creating the exceptional that has always fueled our innovation. For over 100 years, we've had a deep relationship with our audiences and understand them in a unique way. It's a relationship that is built first and foremost on trust. We've journeyed a long way from a print-led business to a truly diversified multi-platform global network. Our investments into this transformation have ensured that our engagement with our audience is transparent and meets the highest levels of privacy protection. These investments have also armed us with insight that our partners find tremendously valuable in better understanding their consumer. We have a robust suite of first-party data products in India, and we'll be seeing more products being launched over the next few months. There's great interest from our partners for us to help them better understand and reach their target audience, not just on our owned and operated properties, but on the web at large. To me, this is the true testament of the fact that Condé Nast delivers premium audiences who otherwise are difficult to prospect. Our data suite is aptly titled Spire, and to tell you more about it, I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague, Karthik Bala, Chief Data Officer at Condé Nast. Karthik is the architect of the Condé Nast data story across the world. He and his team have pioneered the shift across the organization and built the entire suite of first-party data products, redefining the way we work with our partners across the world. Products like Spire, Amplify, Obsidian, and several others help our partners not just with information about their customers, but actionable insights that they can deploy to arm their marketing strategies. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. Hi, I'm Karthik Bala, the Chief Data Officer of Condé Nast, and I'm here to talk to you today about first-party data, which is what I do at Condé Nast, leverage data to figure out the best use of it both within the enterprise and for our partners. So if I had to talk about first-party data and how it's evolved over the last 15 months, it's important to look at the pandemic. The pandemic has completely changed user behavior, or at least I would say significantly changed user behavior. We've had over 3 billion vaccinations, multiple lockdowns, reopens, lockdowns again, and all of this has had a huge impact on our consumer behavior and the way in which we capture first-party data. Based on everything we've learned from the pandemic, I would categorize the lessons in 4 major categories. I would start with privacy. Privacy is at the center stage of various regulatory authorities, people, and in fact, users. Over 90% of them are saying they don't want to share their data anymore. And then it comes to relevancy. If you can give them the right message using their information, it's highly valuable. So users are very interested to get the relevant message in front of them, and that's super important from a marketing perspective. Authenticity is, again, a very important topic. There is no chance to misfire in this world that we live in right now. You have to sound authentic, the voice has to be clear, and it has to sound genuine for them to resonate with you. And authenticity is so critical in providing the right message from a marketer's perspective. And last but not the least, ROI. Every marketer cares about returns, and ROI is at the core of everything we do, and optimizing everything today to find the best value for your money is super important. So let's take a closer look at privacy. This is arguably the biggest change that's happening in the marketplace right now. There's privacy restrictions across the globe, whether it's Europe or in the US, and platforms are adding more and more data restrictions to kind of cater to these legal changes that are happening all over the world. And this is creating a huge challenge for marketers who are looking at traditional marketing, whether it's one-on-one targeting, whether it's measurement or identity, and marketers are constantly looking for new ways to overcome these restrictions to provide the best solution for their products. So the current environment of advertising, to say the least, was broken from the start. If you look at that shoe ad that follows you all over your browsing experience after you've bought the shoe and never stops till you delete your cookies, is fundamentally a flawed experience. It's not private, it's certainly not relevant, and it's not authentic. So it's not all bad news. If marketers can rethink their consumer experience, figure out the relevant use of data to provide the best experience for their consumers, this can have a huge positive impact in both the marketer's message and the response to that message. Now let's talk about today's advertising environment. Publishers, consumers, advertisers, marketers, and ad networks are all connected through the use of third-party cookies. With Google's announcement and Chrome depreciating third-party cookies, this whole ecosystem will break down as third-party cookies disappear. This connectivity is lost. And now, to be able to overcome that, media or major platform companies are coming in the middle, and they are providing the glue to join all of these different parties together. And the ad tech ecosystem breaks. Whoever is depending on third-party cookies to operate their business have a huge amount of stress in their ecosystem. And to overcome that, publishers have to be in the middle of all of this, because we have our first-party contextual data that connects us to our consumers, and we can leverage this to be able to provide not just personalized ads, also contextual ads. And this creates a whole different direct opportunity for marketers and publishers to collaborate, experiment, find new ways of working together, and building these new direct opportunities. So in this new environment, the publisher's first-party data becomes highly valuable and critical to marketers, because publishers now have a very clear understanding of the customer journey, right from when they subscribe, when they're online, what they're doing on social, what they're purchasing, and bringing all of that together and providing it to a marketer to make better decisions becomes highly valuable. So we've always been a champion of first-party data. We've spent multiple years with hundreds of engineers building our Spire platform. So what our Spire platform is it's a performance-driven insights platform that segments audiences by their purchasing desire or purchase intent, and then leverages that data across various channels, and we reach over 1 billion people across all our brands. So we've taken all of this data to fuel outcomes across entire business lifecycle. For example, we use it internally to deliver insights, increase our subscriptions, drive commerce revenue, personalize our consumer engagement, help content creation, and we take all of this data and provide it to our marketing partners for us to build better relationships and better consumer experiences for our advertising campaigns. And how do we do it within our data partnerships? We start off with building on the basis of what we already know about your consumers. We take all of that information, we engage with different channels and to drive conversions depending on where the consumer is. We look at various optimization techniques to build on your objectives, and we can leverage this data to humanize it to build better and deeper connections with your consumers. Let me walk you through an example. Let's say a skincare brand wants to reach audiences that are likely to purchase their new product. Our first-party data becomes the oil to fuel this whole machine. So what we do is we look at this whole experience through a consumer lens, look at what they've read, what they've subscribed to, social media engagements, and all of these components of the consumer to blend it all together and not look at them as individual components, as one single unit that humanizes this data. And then we can take it a step further. We can use the same information to look at the right kind of content that resonates with these people, build the right products around that, and look at all the information we have about content consumption now to bring it all together to make this campaign work. And now we can also take your first-party data and make it work. For example, we have our first-party data. We can take your marketer, your CRM file, bring it together, start off with a very solid baseline of what you know about your consumer, take it, build together, and then find those consumers. Once you find those consumers, we certainly will look at all of the different dimensions we have access to, build a lookalike model of these people, and use that to be able to drive the right outcome for you. So based on everything we've gathered and all the various modeling that we've done, we can take the actionable part of these insights and deliver it to you, both for your marketing needs within Condé Nast and everywhere else. So let's take the skincare example. Let's say we look at all our audiences and we find that the location the primary or the highest propensity buyer where the ROI is the most is in metro cities. And if they're engaged with brands like Condé Nast Traveler and Vogue, we can look at partnerships in travel and fashion to be able to promote these brands. And after further investigation into the data, we realized that the highest propensity audience is very interested in vegan based products. And we might be able to derive that based on their interest in vegan food or just the way that they're using these products within that category. So using all of this information and all of the content that we've gathered, we can find the right kind of message for this consumer to be able to promote the vegan-based product line and to drive the maximum value for the marketer's needs. So now let's take it a step further and look beyond the cookie. We started this discussion about how companies are depreciating cookies. And for the last year and a half, Condé Nast has built a product which is called Obsidian that enables us to build content clusters based on content intelligence and behavioral data to be able to target the right consumer. So in this example, Obsidian will look at all users who bought skincare products and map using purchase data, we will match it back to our content. So we do a deep analysis of this content and we look at content consumption and the consumption patterns across the user base that is using or the user base that's buying skincare products. And when we do this kind of deep analysis, we find other interests other than just skincare that can be brought together in a customer journey that we can use to reach these consumers. For example, people who've consumed content and we predict that they are interested in healthy diet, diving, Priyanka Chopra, bring it all together and make an offering that's highly valuable to the consumers. So in this example, we just talked about skincare example. This can be leveraged across various categories. For example, if you looked at one campaign that we ran, it was for high-end computer, which was like a tablet and a computer. And we found that people who are interested in cooking also bought these computers. So which then enabled us to say, okay, for a sequence of audiences who are consuming cooking content and technology content, bringing them together and building a segment and using that as a basis in which we can reach our consumers to be able to just not reach people in their endemic world, also look at all the other interests that they have and bringing it all together in a cookieless world so we can reach them in all platforms. For things we will never be able to reach them in the past, we can now reach them using this new technology. So now let's talk about going beyond our network. All of the information that we've gathered, we can leverage to reach consumers off our network using the same first-party data that we've gathered, using a platform called CitizenNet that we've built. And this platform enables us to leverage our first-party data and reach consumers across different channels. So the CitizenNet platform scans the skincare brands pages. It looks at the consumers who consume these pages and all the users that interact with them. Using all of this information and over 1 billion social profiles that's available in the CitizenNet database. By the way, CitizenNet was one of the first companies that partnered with Facebook to build this database. We have all of that data in our database. We take all of these profiles. We identify users who are likely interested in these skincare products. We find additional things like luxury and fashion that these consumers care about. And then we look at the overlap of interest. And then we find things like hiking, gluten-free at a different level of sentiment. And we match all of this information and rank them by predicted performance to provide consumers and their interests and bring this segment together to be able to reach them. So once we find consumers that share these interests, we serve them ads on all these interest pages in the most optimized way. We optimize for performance, by cost, by conversion, and all of these metrics to provide the highest ROI. So now let's look at the key takeaways. The first thing is to reimagine the consumer experience. With this paradigm shift that's happening, we have a great opportunity to reset and look at the consumer experience with the consumer at the core. What are the different assets? How do we provide them? When do we provide them? To build that unified story, to build that connection with the consumer is critical, and we have this opportunity to do that. Next, using first-party data to make it work for you. You have first-party data, the publishers have first-party data. If we can leverage this data to provide the right level of relevancy, the right level of privacy, and in a trusted environment to connect with the consumers, it's a hugely valuable asset that we can build. And last but not the least is to find the right data partner. You need to find a partner who has the technology, invested in the technology, have the flexibility and the nimbleness to kind of work together hand in hand to move from the current state to the future state. It'll be highly beneficial for the marketer and the publisher. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. Hopefully I was able to provide you with some information that you can leverage. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex and Karthik. That was a brilliant start to the discussion. It is great to see technology that ensures consumer privacy and compliance with data laws while building the best experience for the consumer. Now, taking on the baton from Karthik, our next session is on how brands and publishers can collaborate in a cookieless world using their first-party data as we discuss forging new relationships between publishers and advertisers for data sharing. Joining us for this deep dive is Anil Chilla, Chief Digital Officer, L'Oreal. Anil is responsible for the digital transformation of L'Oreal, building a digital-first culture and driving L'Oreal's strategy of establishing e-commerce as a growth engine, thereby enabling organizations' global evolution as a beauty tech company. We also have Savita Pai, Chief Digital and Media Officer at Diageo. Savita heads media planning and deployment, digital and influencer conversations, e-commerce, content partnerships, and brand advocacy for the spirits giant Diageo for their India business. She's known for a strategic mindset and the ability to drive large-scale transformation and leadership for diverse teams. And finally, we have Vivek Mishra, Senior Director, Strategic Data Partnerships, The Trade Desk. Vivek leads strategic data partnerships across India, SEA, and ANZ, and helps advertisers become more successful through data-driven programmatic advertising. His focus is to develop and nurture key partnerships in functional areas like audiences, retail, measurement, TV, and context for the region. And moderating this session is Ajay Gupte, CEO, South Asia Wavemaker. Ajay requires no introduction. He has a rich experience of over 23 years in media sales and marketing, spanning across markets like India, Africa, and Indonesia. Ajay joined Wavemaker India in 2019 as COO and then became CEO South Asia in Jan 2020. So over to you, Ajay.
Cookies have been the backbone of our advertising and marketing strategies. But today, with the growing concerns around privacy and with most popular web browsers ending their support for cookies, we are challenged in executing some basic strategies like managing retargeting, understanding attribution, and managing reach and frequency. It is incumbent on us as an ecosystem to develop alternate marketing strategies that do not depend on cookies. Today, we will discuss how publishers and brands can work together to make most of their first and second party data. It will be a practical deep dive into how brands can work safely with second party data providers or publishers to further enrich and enhance ROI from their own first party data. Savita, I'll come to you with my first question. What do you see as the key challenge in a cookieless world? What are the most important things that you see will change?
Well, I think it's not key challenge, but probably challenges right now. And also, I suspect we know only a few of them, and we'll figure it out, as we go along over the next few months and years. Just as we were getting to a point, I think, where we felt we knew our consumers and segmentation and which platforms work for us, what is happening, we're getting to a point where we can measure, brand safety and targeting and ROI, and, this is going to come. So all of those now are challenges for us, right? How do we now get to figure out who are the right consumers? Because we for sure want to, show the right content to the right consumers and not, spam irrelevant consumers. At least in our industry, we need to be very much more conscious of, things like the age, and having above legal drinking age and so on. So we'll have to rethink, I think, how we look at all our partners in the ecosystem, right? Look at what are the technologies which are emerging. I don't know if, anybody's a front runner yet whom we can bet on. And thirdly, how will we start measuring our ROI? How will we start measuring our ability to understand how good our advertising is and the impact it's having on consumers? So from the start to the end, we may have to relook at our advertising strategies.
Yes, and I think one of the key things that come into play really here is the first party data that a brand will have. Anil, my next question is to you. Do elaborate on the criticality of the first party data in this environment that we are all seeing changing, and where does a brand begin really? Where does the brand begin their journey on first party data?
Yeah, I think I'll sort of go back to making a very blasé statement, right? Like brush your teeth in the morning, like understand the consumer expectations, right? I think that's where it starts from. Better understand your consumer expectations and then engage them on their own terms, right? Especially when it comes to first party data. So when you see the worldwide, sort of shift that's happened in consumer sentiment, right, towards data, etc., there's been a lot of bad press, right, that's been happening. So today, I was just reading a survey which said that 64% of consumers actually have a suspicion or hesitate, are concerned about, their privacy and how companies are using first-party data or their data, right? So in that sense, it becomes very important for us as marketers to understand, and especially as digital marketers, we need to we are at the forefront, right, of this specific trend, and we need to keep that in mind. Having said that, I think it's also very important to understand that not all data is equal. Again, another sort of truism kind of a statement, right? So there are varying levels of first party data, right, which one needs to understand before we can actually talk about a data strategy in general, right? So I call it the hierarchy of data. And it starts with the cookies, which think of it as the inverted pyramid, and cookies is at the bottom of the pyramid. And then you get to, a device ID, a mobile or an email. Then you get behavioral data, transactional data, or, at the end, I'd say zero party data, right? So in my view, the hierarchy starts with the cookie, which is at the bottom, and then say zero party data, where the consumers willingly sharing their information, right? So, examples of zero party data could be, someone trying to, enter into a club, right? And you're trying to get membership in a very exclusive club. And in this case, the consumer is willing to share that information because they are getting value in return, right? So, a frequent flyer program in most airlines would be especially when it comes to, getting to higher tiers, etc., would be the most important thing, right? So in that sense, I would say the holy grail really is understanding what level of data that one is at. So it all starts with an assessment, right, on where the organization is in terms of its first party data, sort of collection methodology. And mind you, when we are talking about first party data, we're not just talking about consumer data. First party data means everything that a company owns, right? It's not just consumer data, right? So it's basically making sense of all of that. But when it comes to consumers, obviously, there are additional, I'll say, safeguards, etc. here, right? I'd say once the assessment is sort of done, obviously, one needs to prioritize owned touch points, right? Whether it's online or offline. You want to, think in terms of what are the, opportunities for me to, or for this organization to capture data, and then figure out if there are any, gaps in there, right? And that's where, this plays a very important role. The third is the quality of data, right? So it's not important. I mean, for me, for example, having an email ID or a phone number is pretty useless or redundant or not very relevant. I think the holy grail, as I explained in the hierarchy of data, is getting to that behavioral, transactional, behavioral, sort of zero party data, right? So in that sense, it's important to understand what are the data attributes being collected across the entire ecosystem, right? So post which it's and another important point is that a data silo by itself doesn't make sense. You need to be able to match, map, aggregate, analyze data across the entire organization. So do we as an organization have unique identifiers which allow for that mapping? That also needs to be kept in mind, right? Post which, of course, you get to the consumer data and most importantly, check for consent and so on and so forth. Post which, one needs to start building a data collection, strategy, a website or a landing page or an event or a store and so on and so forth. And that's where, the whole, sort of data ecosystem plays. And then, I mean, from a zero party data perspective, I'd say that, what is it that the company has to offer to a consumer for them to, share willingly their zero party data? What is the club that we are creating? And by club, I just don't mean a loyalty program, but something which is of tangible value, right? I mean, in our case, we would say something like a diagnostic, right? For a beauty, whether it's a virtual try-on or a skin diagnostic, etc., right? Of course, the consumer's getting value in the sense that they get a diagnosis of a skin, right? Of their skin and whatever, in terms of issues, if any, that they have, right? And then sort of go from there. So sort of a long story for a very simple question, Ajay.
Clearly, the whole first-party data collection, is layered. It's complex, and there are privacy concerns, consumer concerns that need to be kept in mind. It's not as as simple as it could be made out to be. Savita, my question is now to you. What kind of tech infrastructure are we really looking at, and any idea of what kind of investments we are talking about in making a sound first-party data infrastructure for the brand?
I think Anil covered a whole lot of it, but I can think of the top 5, 6, once you've laid down the strategy. First, where and how are you collecting, this data? It could be offline, it could be online, it could be from a multitude of channels. So firstly, what is the size and quality of the data? Are they all similar or not? And then, how do you all bring it together? You can feel happy that you have a few millions of data and then, not be able to know what to do with it now, right? So one is data collection and having a more uniform platform for that. Secondly, then, where will you store it? Assuming you have all the user consent and so on, how will you store it and how will you mine it is, I think, more important. Making sense of all that you have. The third one would be managing this data and content that you get from multiple channels. So it's possible that you start working with a lot of partners to start getting this data. So to ensure that your immediate ecosystem is all talking to each other and with all the right data privacy guidelines in place. I find that is sometimes very important to ensure that all of us are on the same page and handling the data in a similar manner. And I can't emphasize how much investments we will have to make that happen, right? Not just the tech infrastructure and everything, but just in ensuring that everybody follows as many regulations as you probably are. Fourthly, it will be a lot of analytics for the right segmentation and for the right measurements. Once you have the data in, and when you're going to test it somewhere, when you're going to utilize it on your own, or if you're going to do it on other platforms platforms as well? Are you now going to, measure, you're becoming a mini platform or sometimes a mini publisher yourself, possibly, especially if you're going to develop, your own platform. So that would be the fifth. What is your infrastructure geared up to do for your own platform, which may be simpler, but which may require a different type of investment to reach out to the multitude of consumers, or are you going to do it on third parties? So the sixth thing is, how do you integrate this data onto all your right platforms? So at least 6 or 7 top things that I can think of that you will now have to start thinking of yourself. My other question, in such a forum would be, how should we as advertisers be getting together so that we create the right, a platform so that all of us can benefit from it? Because my concern is also that eventually everybody starts building their own strategy, and suddenly it's going to be way expensive and may not be as useful for us when finally we all want to possibly work together, have a few common set of platforms. So how should we as an industry also start thinking of the right way of collaboration? Maybe another area which may help us optimize our tech infrastructure needs.
Yeah, thanks, Savita. I think what you said, a very important point there is that it's not only about the amount of data that you collect, but it's about how you collaborate to enhance it and how you collaborate to make use of it in a more meaningful way. And Vivek, I come to you now. I mean, it's a perfect segue into my question to you, which is, how do you see first-party data enhancement happening through collaboration with second-party data sources, namely the publisher network, in a safe and privacy-compliant manner?
Thanks, Ajay. And I think really good points discussed so far. And Anil talked about digital transformation in a nutshell, right? The ability to bring together various first-party data points in a single view. He talked a little bit about orchestration, and Savita, you talked a little bit about collaboration, and the fact that there are multiple pieces out here. There's how do we orchestrate all of that in a manner that is consistent? How do we solve for standards that are consistent across the industry, right? The lens I'll wear here is that of the aspect of enabling marketers from a planning, activation, measurement perspective, and from let's say a programmatic perspective, right? So we, in such a scenario, I feel the role of publishers is super key. And hear me out. We're talking about publishers playing in this new normal where advertisers are looking at data-driven advertising. Publishers almost have this golden opportunity to go out and evangelize the core value proposition of the open internet. And this is what I think we as industry participants have been talking about for a very long time. The fact that they are that missing link that could help advertisers map out their consumers on the open internet and not necessarily be limited to specific walled gardens or specific areas where they do not know what their consumers are doing, right? So I think that's really core philosophical sort of aspect. The second two more tactical pieces are, I would say, like data rights and data governance. So the framework needs to be able to spell out clearly data rights and use cases, like if this is what the publisher needs to do, then this is what the advertiser can do. So the ability for the publisher to spell that out clearly. And the data governance framework will clearly lay out like this is how it gets implemented, and the advertiser can go out and do activation on the basis of that. So an example of this is, for example, on the Trade Desk platform, there's what we call the third-party endpoint, right? So what that does is a publisher could spin out a custom data segment on that in a manner that the advertiser can go out and activate it and just activate it, right? And that's a very clean, clear, well-defined arrangement of what that data could do. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on this.
Thanks, Vivek. Anil, my next question is for you. From obviously, with the cookies going, there are challenges in being able to accurately assess ROI and see how do you maximize your ROI. So how do you see publishers helping brands better track and therefore better improve ROI?
Sure. So yeah, I think publishers have content, right? As we all know and we've heard many times, content is the king, right? But I have a spin on that. I say contextual content is the kingmaker. So in that sense, it's very important. So publishers build contextual content, right? And that's where their own, sort of understanding of the consumer, of understanding of the audiences that come to their site make a difference, right? So in that sense, the usage of their first party data to, sort of better understand the audiences that come to their site in service of the brands, or in service of first, of course, the consumer, and then subsequently the brand, right? So in terms of their marketing solutions, I'd say would be very important, right? So I mean, we as a beauty company would not be interested, for example, in toothpaste, right? And I'm just using a random example here. So in that sense, what is the content there, the contextual content there, where my sort of advertising can be shown to a eventual consumer or to an audience, right? And of course, the audience, in that sense, the targeting, therefore, or the content, the context, the contextual content that the publisher is showing, therefore becomes very important there, right? Which is relevant to us. So therefore, keeping a tab both of the consumers, and of the content, and of course, what the brands require would be, I'd say, one of the first things that as a brand that I would expect from a publisher, right? The second is, from a brand standpoint, I think it's very important that for me, a publisher is not just a content delivery network, but eventually, how is a publisher helping me meet the business objectives, right? In the sense, whether it's a upper funnel brand equity related, or whether it's a lower funnel conversion related, or mid funnel consideration related, doesn't matter, right? So, I mean, the point here is that is my brief clear, first of all, and is the publisher helping me achieve the objectives that I have from my from my campaign, for the investment that the brand is putting in that sense, right? And it's not, in my view, enough to just deliver the advertising and say, okay, I'm done, let's move on, right? Let's move on to the next set. I think there needs to be one guidance in terms of how best to use the platform, right? That's been created, and that's where we go back to the first point, right? The understanding of the audiences, the understanding of their preferences on content, the contextualization of the content, and how the brands sort of advertising is playing there, right? So that's the second, that's one of the factors, I'll say, that becomes very important, right? And then hand-holding, not only hand-holding, but actually delivering to the brief, right? In terms of whether it's upper, mid, or lower funnel, in terms of campaign and the metrics, right? So it's sort of, I'll say, overlapping a bit with the the agency, but in my view, as a publisher, if I need to succeed, then I'd say, from brand's point of view, that would become very important for me, right? That's the second part. Now, thirdly, from a brand's perspective, I mean, we all know about the cost of acquisition of a consumer. We all track CPA like crazy. We track delivered impressions, cost per delivered impression, cost per view, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth, an infinity of metrics, right? Besides, of course, Savita talked about the cost of setting up data infrastructure. But in my view, there's a cost also of acquiring, data, right? And which needs to be kept in mind. Data is not free. And then, working with publishers, you need to establish, what that is, right, in terms of that cost, and then figure out, as a brand, what you're willing to pay for. And that's where, I think the cost comes in. And then, of course, points 1 and 2 help deliver the ROI bit as well, right? So that's my, sort of take on this topic.
Thanks, Anil. I love that contextual content is the king maker. I think that's a very nice line. I shall drop it with your permission.
Of course.
Savita, I mean, on the same lines, a question for you from your perspective. How do you see the publisher network better supporting you in tracking and improving ROI from your perspective? I know Anil has kind of elaborated on that, but when you look at it from your brands, is there anything else that you would consider?
I think number one, just as an aside, is that the publishers now have to invest in their own tech infrastructure. Huh? Going back to my last point with you, now they need to be as data savvy, because they're going to be, if content is king and contextual content is kingmaker, then how do they now serve all of us as subjects becomes supremely important. In all honesty, I think they will have to now think through how they make this of course a competitive advantage for themselves, in order to work with the right delivery of content to delight consumers, but also therefore work with the advertisers a lot more closely. I think it may otherwise become a long chain, and very quickly the top collaborators will bubble up to the surface that all of us would love to work with, right? In that sense, that will be number one. Second one would be whoever would be, I think, most transparent in how they would be building it out themselves, and how they're looking to build if they are calling that as somewhat second party, or somebody who knows who their consumers are, their data consumers are, their content consumers are, knowing them very well and sharing it in the right manner, which is crafted towards us, versus just numbers, but with a lot more inciting, I think, as you mentioned, to help us not use the typical word of segmentation, but to show us what is the power of talking to these sort of consumers. And thirdly, just I think support for possibly multiple types of advertisers. They may need to create customized ways in which each of us develop our systems. How we don't know how the larger platforms and the larger tech world will go towards. And I think Vivek can add a lot more, but how any of the providers will start probably consolidating into 1 to 2 best practices, or 1 to 2 best platforms for us to work with. That's a third one. If they are able to develop a common language, which many of us are able to talk as well, and we are able to do the same through our data transformation within our respective companies. That will be the role now that the publisher has to suddenly play, possibly something which used to happen many eons ago in the non-digital age, where they knew their consumers the best. That's probably the position in which the publishers will be. But yeah, again, here I think whoever works the most collaboratively will probably be able to get the cream very quickly.
Thanks, Avita. Very clearly, you're seeing publishers really being a great support to the brand, and it's important also that they make the investments on their end, also on infrastructure and on supporting brands, and creating customized solutions for brands which brands can use. So I think some very relevant points there. Vivek, I'll come to you now on this point. On how do you see really publishers now gearing up, given that this is the perspective that brands have, that they're really looking to the publisher ecosystem in supporting brands improve ROI and make better decisions. How is the publisher ecosystem gearing up for this, and what are the key areas that are being focused on?
I will extend the ideas that Savita talked about, but from a data perspective, we are clearly in a golden era and a remarkable era of data-driven advertising, where advertisers are trying to layer in more and more data, their own data, second-party data, third-party data, combine it, and so on and so forth, and drive decisioning. A lot of this decisioning is also multivariate. It could possibly not be done by a human being. Human beings are best used for much more strategic thinking, driving conversations, doing consulting, not doing the math behind bidding, right? So with that context, I feel publishers have 2 key roles to play out here. And this is a dual role. Really, the first piece is really opening up as much inventory as possible in an efficient manner to advertisers in a way that they can do data-driven advertising, right? And I think this is something really moving towards what we call the ability for buyers to do bid-based buying as compared to fixed-price buying. And that really is crux. And a lot of publishers would think, hey, but then how does this fit in with my direct sales? How does this fit in with how we are looking at? And I think there are many ways to sort of look at this. the second opportunity opens up the ability for publishers to actually grab this and run with it, right? Which is to go out and invest in their own data assets. Savita touched upon that a little bit. And I'll elaborate this a little bit more, right? The ability to invest in data assets means advertisers can go out and run with those data assets, run it on the media of the publisher, but run it on pretty much any other third-party media. And this, for that publisher, is actually a win-win-win scenario. And the essential principle behind this is that data scales infinitely, whereas media, for that matter, actually you can run out of it. Media is like an airline seat, data is not. So I think when publishers realize that, it really opens up a whole new opportunity for them. And it's a win-win-win for advertisers.
Great, thanks, Vivek. So what is good to see really is that I think the ecosystem as a whole, from the brand perspective, from the publisher perspective, we're all clear that the growth and the understanding in this new cookieless world is only going to happen effectively if we all come together and support each other. And investments are required on both sides. Transparency is required, and the ability to contextually reach out to the consumer is extremely important. And the more we invest in data as an ecosystem, the more data will grow, and the more we all as an ecosystem will benefit. So it's all about collective focus, collective investment, collective support in a transparent way to make sure that we all succeed in this new cookieless world. So thank you for that. Thank you all for that. I just one last question for all of you, based on how the world is changing. And my question really is, and I'll start with you, Vivek, because I'll go the other way. Is in how ready do you think we are today to face this cookieless world, and where do you see us by the end of 2022?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. Firstly, I think this is not really about cookies, a specific identifiers like cookies or browsers like Chrome, right? This is really about the internet. The internet is much bigger than any one specific identifier, one specific operating system or browser for that matter, right? That's one thing I'll sort of really lay on the one side. And the other thing to talk about is cookies themselves have now sort of reached a point where they were an outdated form of an identifier. They came with cookie sync issues and so on and so forth. So we are reaching to a very logical conclusion of where we are now as an industry trying to come together and define an identity-based approach, which is much more sustainable, right? We're talking about open sourced interoperable systems. We're talking about approaches that are secure, which will not be tampered around by bad actors. We're talking about approaches which are independently governed, not a hostage to any specific system. And lastly, approaches that take consumer privacy, and Anil talked about it earlier on, like as the central tenet of how it's built. And I think the entire industry has gotten behind it. Unified ID 2.0 is one example. The traders clearly is championing it, but it is an industry initiative, right? Every major buy-side, sell-side data platform in the world has now gone out and supported this. And what I'm saying is that that's not the only identifier-based approach. There are so many others with which are interoperable, right? So to answer your question, I feel really optimistic about this. I feel we are, I would say we are between 6 and a 7 in terms of out of 10. And that's just because the entire groundwork for that approach has been laid down. It's about going out and really executing and hitting the ball out of the park as an industry.
Great. Thanks, Vivek. Anil, coming to you. It's a 6 or a 7 from Vivek. How do you see it?
I have a bit of a contrarian view here. I think we are a 3 at this point in time in terms of the overall ecosystem. Having said that, I think, a lot of the legacy, sort of advertising or whatever, that brands are doing across the globe are sort of built still on, the age-old techniques, etc. Right? So having said that, I think there's a lot of evolution, that sort of needs to happen, in my view, right? And the whole approach in understanding, of course, there's a first-party data and first-party data. Beyond that, there are levels, grades, and then, of course, the zero-party data, which is sort of the holy grail, right? In my view, at this point, I'll say, of course, that may change in the future, etc. Right? So I'd say we are around a 3 or a 4 at this point in time, and I think we'll need to go up to a 7 or 8 in a couple of years, right, to be able to actually adapt to the new set of regulations that are coming in.
Great. So clearly that there is a long way to go, and it's important that we move very quickly. Savita, where do you see us?
Yeah, I'm actually, I think, on the side of the scale of Anil. I don't think we can look at all of us, on the same scale, to be honest. I think some of the people in this value chain are probably ahead of the curve. As brands and advertisers, I would agree with Anil. I think we have such a plethora of ranges in that 2 to 4 itself. Even I was like ranging between that. I would probably say a 2 to 3. I think, however, that if we, tackle all the things that we spoke of in the last so many minutes, where we build the right ecosystems, where the partnerships, start coming out, people start, collaborating and coming towards a few industry standards, where we start making consumer at the center and ensuring that whether it's first party or zero party, as Anil is saying, he's given me a new term today, and we move towards then leveraging it well. I think it won't take long for everybody to move towards move towards a 7 or an 8 in 2 years. I think we have the famous one of how long radio and television and everything took to adopt. Today we've come to this level of using cookies and using third-party data as well. I think it will be accelerated as all of us begin recognizing it. So it may not be very far, or may take some effort, but may not be too far for us to get hopefully to the 7 or 8.
Thanks, Savita. So clearly, we are looking at it today at either a 3 or 4 or a 6 or 7. But I think all of us are very clear that we need to move quickly and get it to an 8 as soon as possible, and make that a success.
And if I may jump here, I feel like as an industry, I feel we will do a phenomenal job of coming together. As individual companies and firms and participants, we might feel in a certain manner at this point of time. But I just feel if you look at any other large global distributed movement that's moved, so in general, I feel very optimistic about us as a group coming together and making this happen.
Wonderful. On that positive note, I thank you all for a very nice, enriching session. I think there is some very good points that we've raised, and we see clearly a nice, bright future ahead of us. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Great discussion. Thanks, Ajay, for moderating.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, Anil. Thanks, Savita. This was great.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, speakers, for that super interesting discussion. It really opens a lot of opportunities for the industry to collaborate and work with. And I just love the positivity all around. This also segues nicely into a glimpse on how Condé Nast is partnering with marketeers across the world. I would love to talk you through it, but it may just be better to show you.
Real-time, actionable insights about your audience are vital to an effective ad campaign that exceeds your KPI, which is where Condé Nast's Spire is proving indispensable. Spire is an innovative data platform that enables marketers to reach their target audience across all digital, social, and video platforms, including YouTube, and then drive that audience to purchase. Condé Nast brands influence millions of consumer choices every day. Whether your goal is to defend loyal buyers, conquest competitive buyers, or activate lapsed buyers, your message will be directed to the right consumers at the right time. Activate immediately with one of 200,000 pre-built segments, or let us build custom models that target your desired audience. These custom audience models create powerful, targeted media strategies for our clients. We start with Condé Nast's identity-based, first-party understanding of our audience across content consumption, social, survey, email, and ad interactions, and premium paywall subscriptions. We then add strategic second-party data that layers in deterministic search, browse, and purchase signals from partners such as 1010 Data, JumpShot, Experian, Nielsen, Acxiom, IQVIA, and many others. Through this powerful combination, Spire identifies Condé Nast visitors with the highest affinity to meet your KPIs, providing actionable audience insights and resulting in average 3 times to 5 times ROI when measured. This ensures that your brand's message gets in front of the consumers that are most likely to purchase your product as they are making daily purchase decisions. From early adopters looking for the next big thing, to influential loyalists who impact others, Spire is so powerful that we will offer brand and sales lift studies to provide precise measurement and actionable audience insights for eligible Spire campaigns, offering real-time reach, relevance, and results. Condé Nast's Spire iteratively optimizes your campaign, improving performance and providing you with exclusive audience insights and success measures to drive your business forward. Reach, relevance, and results.
Now, it's one thing to talk about partnerships, but data is a larger subject than just that. The relationship between a brand, any brand, and their customer is a sacred space. And let's hear from some brands across industries on how they are working with data resources and their own data pipelines to create the best user experience and ROI. Wearing the data lens with us, we have DBS Bank, Johnson & Johnson, Woot and Lotame to talk about how they are building their data mechanisms, collecting, enriching, and using their first-party data. Let's first welcome Akashdeep Batra, SVP and Head of Marketing, Growth and Customer Experience at DBS Bank. Akash leads a team of seasoned marketeers to drive brand marketing, consumer segments, data-driven marketing and communication, paid media and new acquisition, consumer research and insights, and the customer experience across consumer banking business. Before this, Akash was the head of brand communications, corporate brand and digital at Nestle India. Next up is Chanan Sawhney, head of media and digital, consumer health, Johnson & Johnson. She's a digital and audience specialist, brand consultant, D&I leader, connected commerce guru, and a working mom. Before J&J, Chanan was leading digital marketing globally at Tata Global Beverages with experience across markets like UK, US, Canada, and China. Completing the panel, we have Chanpreet Arora, business head, Woot. Chanpreet is a recognized leader in the Indian media industry. Her work over the last 19 years has included launching and scaling of leading international and local media brands in India, including Vice Media, the New York Times, Times Internet, Discovery Channel, and Formula One. And quizzing these marketeers on their data strategy will be Gaurav Seth, Managing Director, Lotame India. Gaurav Seth joined Lotame in 2015 as the company's India country manager and has been a key part of helping Lotame grow exponentially within the market. He has been an industry veteran in digital advertising and has spent the last 11 years in the data management space alone. So without any further ado, over to you, Gaurav.
Hello, everybody. The topic of our session today is collecting, using, and enriching data from a brand's perspective. And we have a very good mix of panelists here. You know, we have Chanan and we have Akash from the demand side. They're marketeers. We have Chanpreet on the supply side. You know, she represents food. And then I'm from the technology enablers side, which is Lotame, which is a data management platform. So a good mix of panelists here. So I'm sure we will have very interesting perspectives from each one of us. And we would be discussing, on how each one of us is collecting data. What are the data strategies? How we are using first, second, and third-party data. What are your opinions around data privacy and the deprecation of third-party cookies? And then, some questions that are specific to your own businesses. So without further ado, I'll start with Akash. So Akash, you represent a bank, a financial services company, and there's a lot of data that comes your way, right? Like, people logging into the website, walking into a bank, calling a call center. So a lot of online, offline data, a lot of transactional data. How do you navigate through all of this? Like, if you could help us understand what's the data strategy?
Sure. Thanks, guys, for having me. Let me start by saying data for us is not an initiative, or it's not a project really. For us, it's fundamentally an operating model, right? Which means not just for business decision making, but also for consistently optimizing our business operations. Data becomes very central. That's one. And I think the second important point is, I think our belief is that, being data driven is not equal to being digital, right? And the impact, in my mind, the impact that data and artificial intelligence will actually have on customers' businesses is going to be a significant much more than how much digital had an impact on all of us, right? So I think for us, it's continuously building capabilities and processes within the organizations to make sure we can start taking that leap towards data and AI, right? And marketing is no different, right? Rather, the way we position ourselves internally is that we're a data-driven marketing team, right? And that's a consistent positioning that we have internally, and that actually runs across the entire marketing value chain, right? Whether it's about understanding customers or building propositions and segments and brand building, communication, customer experience, even user interface, user experience on the app and digital properties. So it kind of just works across for us, right? And eventually our goal is to leverage data to drive what we call N is equal to 1, right? Both from an experience perspective and from a from a messaging perspective, right? And and I always love to take this example, saying giving information to customers about transactions is pretty standard, right? I mean, all banks do it, telecom providers do it, and so on and so forth, right? But we leverage data and take it forward and start using it even in places where you least expected it, right? For example, obviously when you get charged, you get a transaction message, right? But what if a merchant actually charged you twice, right? We actually raised as an alert and saying, you've been charged twice. Was this planned, intended, or not? Or even, again, somebody sends you a money. You get a transaction alert, right? But how about money that you were expecting, which is possibly recurring every month, for example, rent payments, right? That eventually allows us to deliver an experience leveraging data which consumers love, and actually we provide a lot more value to that, right? Also from a marketing message perspective, we leverage a lot of data to drive what we say next best conversation, right? Clearly leveraging consumer data and behavior to understand what's the next message that they're expecting from us and where the propensity of taking an action is much higher, right? So I think everything that we do has a data backing to it, and I think, and I always joke about this, and I used to work for an FMCG company before this. The amount of data that I've seen at DBS is in last 2 years is probably more than what I've ever seen in my previous life, right? So I think, data is everything that we do.
Okay, thanks, Akash. And you've actually cued me into the next question. That's for Chanan, which is where you just said that you've seen so much of data that in the last 2 years that you haven't seen before in your entire marketing career. So Chanan, the question is that unlike Akash, for you, your users may be aware of your brand. They may be consuming your communication. They may be watching videos. They may be doing things, but they may never engage with your Libre digital footprint. So as a FMCG company, how do you navigate this? Like, how do you collect user information? How do you make it actionable?
So for us, firstly, thanks for having me again, and hello to everybody else. So for us, I think FMCG, like you rightly said, is always on the cusp of having mass audiences. So you're always looking for scale online, and you're going out to millions and millions of target audiences at a frequency of a 3+, etc. So for us, yes, not all data is equally important. There is some data that's very important, and then there's other data which is mostly more of a reach and frequency option for me, right? The data that gets important is the data that starts to move down the funnel with me, right? So if somebody has seen me once, taken an action, somebody's seen me twice, taken another action, and I think what J&J does beautifully is define different actions for where you are in the journey, right? So the moment you start to define a journey, you're able to handhold the consumer When you're able to handhold the consumer, you're able to get them to do the desired action for you. Basis that desired action, that's when the data part starts to get richer for us. Consumers who land on the website. So obviously we don't have to ask for as much information as a banking service. But at the same time, there is customization of messaging and there is customization of an experience that can still be brought in for our range of products. And that happens through the data that we actually start to see from a first party perspective. We do have PIIs through sampling, etc. But then that's something that, again, there is a whole lot of, TNC to it and, what we do. But first party data becomes very important because you're able to remarket and you're able to retarget. Then you're also able to build that customer experience so that N is equal to 1 that, Akash was referring to. That becomes far more viable. And I think more and more the clutter that is around there, both in terms of messaging and advertising, even brands which are mass will have to start customizing their own experience or bring that richer, experience to the consumer for them to actually add to cart or take that action, right? Sometimes it's engagement, sometimes it's add to cart, and brands like us have to build for both equity and sale. So at different points in time, we are doing different things with brands. So that's how data gets leveraged for us, essentially.
Great, thanks, Shannon. And speak. So I think both of you spoke of personalization. Akash spoke of customizing messages based on what you're receiving as a part of communication. And you also spoke, like you said, that although you're a mass market brand, personalization is becoming more and more important. So Chanpir, as an OTT publisher, I think there are two aspects to data that probably are very important for you. One is data for the demand, for what marketers want and how they want to target their users, and you adopting your data strategy around that. And the second is personalization, where we are consuming a lot of video content and we are binge watching and now. So as an OTT publisher, like what is your data strategy and specifically with regards to these two things that I just spoke about?
So thank you. Like I have been sharing with everybody, we are in the business of entertainment and not just looking at ourselves as publishers who put out certain hours of content at any point in time. So our approach is very data driven. Just like what Akash mentioned here. We are a fully logged in only OTT platform. We collect only first party data from our users. We have 90% addressability on our platform. That's how seriously we take understanding our users. But that is just the first step, right? Understanding demographics today is probably only the smallest step that you can take in the course of digital marketing or being a strong digital brand. It's really critical for us to build personas of our user cohorts and define them by the passion points, by the communities that they are in, and start mapping that to their content consumption habits. It could be very different. It could be somebody in Indore and somebody in Bombay having a similar content consumption habit because they are big fans of Counter-Strike 2. And it really does happen for us. And that's the most fascinating aspect of understanding the person beyond the demographics. And that's our journey. And we are committed to understanding our users and providing them with content which is engaging or entertaining. As an OTT platform, we are the escape today. And that is true today. That may not be true tomorrow. And we're continuously investing in research over and above that to understand our consumers, which is par for the course. And how this helps us beyond providing better content and having engaged users on our platform is, like you rightly said, we are an advertiser partnership-driven platform. We work very closely with our partners to help them understand who our consumers are. And to be frank, even before we address the elephant in the room, which is the sunset of third-party cookies, we have been very vehemently engaging with our partners on the power of content. Content is and will always remain king for us. And with our understanding of our users and their personas, we are able to build a strong context for what is the kind of user who is consuming a certain type of content. So I think it's a great start and a very exciting time ahead for us.
Great. Thanks, Chanpreet. So, we just saw, Chanpreet and Akash speak about, them having a lot of data. I mean, Chanpreet's users are, Booth's users are online, and a lot of users for Akash are consuming, DBS's services online. But Shannon, for you, as we spoke in the previous question, first party data may not be at the scale that you would want it to be. So how are you supplementing it with other data partnerships like second and third party data? Is it something that you think is of value to you? Is it something that you are incorporating as a strategy in your marketing activities?
So I think for brands which are again who have been digital for a while now, so while data is getting more and more spoken in terms of how we utilize it now. Data has been getting collected for over a time, right? And digital marketing efforts have been on for a longish period of time. So for brands and organizations like us, actually the pivot is more from third party to first party. I think that is where the spectrum is. Now, as I mentioned before, one can certainly try and build the lookalikes, etc. from your first party. You still need to have a deeper source of data, which definitely comes from the second party data partnerships, which are again richer, just to Chanpreet's points, where affinities are there, and you can still sort of funnel it down to very, very specific users, apply more understanding of a high value audience, that this could be the audience which is more likely to work for my brand or to convert for my brand. Third party for us is essentially only for absolute new campaigns or information where again huge scale is required, where third party keeps getting tapped in, because third party is where the scale is. And at the top of the funnel, there is a lot that one has to obviously dabble in with the second party partnerships as well as third. But as you go down the funnel, I think the pivot is more towards first party, and then further strengthening that first party, either through specific messaging or a plan for that.
Great, thanks, Shannon. So, Akash, Shannon just mentioned that second and third party data is probably used for them when they are looking to reach out to completely new users, and then as you move down the funnel, you probably want to use first party data. In your case, you have a lot of first party data, but then that's where consumers have probably subscribed to your services and are already using your services. But when it comes to new customer acquisition, when you're looking to reach out to users that may not be using your services at all, do you find value in second and third party data? Do you have any such alliances, partnerships in place today?
No, absolutely. So I think let me just add one point to what Chanan said. See, when you're doing top of the funnel, your primary intent is to drive reach and get to the right audience, or targeted reach, as we say it, right? The challenge, obviously, there that we start facing is that the attribution and conversions becomes much difficult, right? So the challenge, therefore, is, I mean, you don't know whether it's working or not. Yes, you can do researches. Yes, you can do brand lifts and everything, and then do that. So I think for a mass marketer, and I'm saying it because even today when we do top of the funnel campaigns, that's one challenge that we always face, right? So therefore, it obviously works much better if you're as broad as possible with your campaigns, right? See, on the and as you rightly said, I think re-engagement first party data is enough, right? I mean, I know my customers, I know their behavior, and it's easy for me to go present them with a proposition or a messaging which has a higher chances of conversion. Prospecting, as I said, new customer acquisition is absolutely critical, where we have to go to our customers, right? And basis the data and the work that we've done over the last 5 years. For example, we've got a digital only bank which is called DigiBank. We only acquire digitally right now, right? So that has given us enough information about what kind of customers do we really need to go after, basis customer lifetime value, basis where they come from, what their behavior on and off the platform, and so on and so forth. So I think there is where the usage of second party and third party becomes much more useful. much more valuable, if I have to say so. In my experience, second party tends to be more focused and more outcome driving. Third party is a continuous learning and an activity for you to iterate and keep seeing what is working, what is not, right? And for example, we've got a partnership with Big Basket, where we've launched a co-branded debit card with them, and we know the kind of people who come there are very close to the people that we would want, and therefore, that's the partnership that we leverage. Third party, we obviously continuously look for players in the market who can come and offer us, high intent, very sharp data, which allows us to acquire. And some work, some don't, right? I think that's the point. Again, I just want to reiterate, the only way for you to leverage third-party data is to continuously iterate. You never get results in the first few iterations. It's probably the fifth or sixth iteration when you start seeing much more value out of that.
Great. Thanks, Akash. That was insightful. So Chanpreet, you mentioned that there is a lot of first-party data that you have. Your users are online, and you're increasingly, I think, you have users that are logging into your services, and without logging in, maybe they may not be able to consume any content. And a lot of entertainers and OTT publishers are moving in that direction. So, but at the same time, you have to align yourself with demand. So, where do you see value in terms of second and third party data, or do you think you could do away with it?
Okay, so I think the first most important point for us is that third-party data has not always been favoring premium content creators such as us, right? Because what tends to happen is that we just commoditize audiences to CPM, reach, demographics, and let's be candid, it tends to happen. And the heartbreaking point is where your most premium content is competing with UGC. To be able, because the same audience is actually consuming both pieces of content, and you say there's actually no difference because it's the same audience everywhere. So yes, I think I don't think we don't need data partnerships. In fact, data partnerships are going to be more and more critical. Like Akash mentioned, their partnership with Big Basket. We're exploring many such partnerships with platforms who have first-party data. And they're looking, if there are e-commerce giants who are looking to engage with entertaining platforms such as ours, and we're seeing some fantastic results for our advertisers. Yes, and we're even partnering with big tech like Google. They are the ones who provide our ad tech backbone, and now they are forthcoming, given that unique IDs and Flock are the different opportunities that we're all exploring. They're forthcoming and providing tech solutions as providers to see how we can improve usage of our own data for our partners. We're also, last but not the least, we're also working very closely with certain strong FMCG brands who have their own data, like Chanan, you mentioned, and seeing how that can be synced to provide better reach and engagement for our partners.
Great. That's a very good point, Chanpreet. So are you saying that you are engaging with brands in a way where they bring their first party data and you put it together and then you make it available? Okay, that's a very interesting perspective and take on how you can optimize your data-led campaigns. So that's good to know.
But having said that, there is still a lot to be desired and a lot of ad tech investment that is required to be done. And I mean, I'm sure Chanan, Akash, like the big fight between PMP and direct, and it's a never-ending bloodbath on both sides, right? The marketer doesn't feel there's enough measurement. The publisher is like, this is too much bleed. There is too much measurement, and finally we are on a platform of entertainment and reach. So we have to find that common ground. But yes, I think the ideal state will only come when we talk to each other, in terms of our data, in terms of our goals, in terms of our issues, because we both are serving the same customer. We, as in all of us, are serving the same customer, different needs of the same customer. So yes, keeping data privacy in mind and keeping our objectives in mind, partnerships is the way to go. I don't think we can start building walled gardens here.
Understood. No, that's a fair point. And speaking of walled gardens, and speaking of second and third party data, I'll bring in the elephant in the room, as Chanpreet likes to call it, which is the deprecation of third party cookies, and also Apple's most latest 14.5 update, where where they you have to seek consent to capture a user ID. So essentially, it means the same thing, actually, whether it's the deprecation of third-party cookie, which now has been pushed until the end of 2023, or what Apple is doing. The ability to identify a user across different websites or across different applications or websites. This was something which was very democratic before, or even is, as we speak right now, through the third-party cookie, or the ability to identify a user by a mobile ID, whether it's an advertising ID on Android or whether it's an IDFA on Apple. But with these new policies that are coming into place, we may not be able to do that any longer. So keeping that in mind, and keep speaking of this, these second and third party strategies that we just spoke of, and then speaking of Flock that you just mentioned, what are the data strategies, or what is the identity strategy that each one of you are looking at to overcome this? So I'll start with Akash. Akash, your views on this, please.
All right, this is a this is a very interesting topic in general, and I'll tell you why, because nobody knows what's happening, right? So here's my view about on how things will shape out, right? And I'm going to take a slightly arrogant client point of view, and also a participant in the ecosystem point of view, right? At a very fundamental level, I don't care. Right, I'd say it's a platform's problem. It's a publisher's problem. Let them sort it out. If they're not effective in delivering what I asked for, I go somewhere else. Right. I mean that's the sort of say the arrogant view. Right. My ecosystem view is that one. I mean, I think this had to happen. Right. I mean, I think with GDPR, with the California privacy laws. I mean, with even upcoming Indian laws, I mean, privacy becoming more centric and consumers getting more choice in controlling that data, it had to happen, right? In Apple, with its, as I always keep saying, I know it's a marketing ploy, or is it, in them increasing their ad network ploy, or is it really something which they care about customers, right? Having said that, I mean, obviously they've taken the step, they've set the ball rolling. Again, as an ecosystem view, I would have liked them to be more open, more transparent, more upfront about the changes that they're bringing than making it so so immediate and abrupt. And unlike, for example, Google's been a lot more forthcoming. They've moved it and all of that stuff, right? So I think that's one. So see, the impact largely as a marketer will be number one, the lower funnel conversions will become very tough. Right. And I think that's a big concern for me, right? At least from what I see right now. I mean, again, not to say everything will change every second day. So not that I'm committing myself to these statements. The low funnel conversions effectiveness is going to go down significantly. So therefore, what are the implications in my mind? I think one implication big is low funnel marketers will start spending a lot more money and effort on top of the funnel marketing, right? Because as Chanpreet was saying, Chanan was saying, you have to make sure that the consumer goes through the funnel, and that's the sort of traditional way of looking at marketing. You impact the customer, give a stimulus, top of the funnel, and then he goes down the funnel, right? The other thing that I think more as an implication will be, and we discussed this, is second party data, right? I mean, I will start partnering with Chanpreet or Chanan and saying, let's use our first party data and make sure if we can identify affinities, let's do the exchange, right? That's point number two. Point number three is I think my ability to start focusing on publishers directly, right? I mean, stop relying on larger intermediaries, which will have to deal with this solution, deal with this problem, and build a solution. For example, I will go talk to a blog which talks about loans, student loans, for example, and say, I want to do a partnership with you and make sure I'm available, because I already know the intent and the affinity is going to be much higher, right? I think the other thing will be, while Google and Facebook still will have a lot of data of the behavior on their own platforms, right, which will still be relevant, might not be as effective because, across the web, it's going to be difficult for them to farm that data and make, much more sharper profiles and therefore drive conversions. And I also feel, and last 2 points, sorry, and I think as marketers, we'll have to start getting much more comfortable with model data, right? I mean, today our reliance on direct attribution is so high that, I want to look at last click attribution and say that's where the, stimulus came from and that's what drove actions. I think that's the other thing that's going to change. I think, and I always say this because I think since this has been happening, marketers and non-marketers, everyone seems to be troubled, right? I mean, we've got a digital bank and therefore, obviously we had to do the 14.5 update as well, giving customers the choice. But I think the important thing is, and I mean, my view is for all of us to stay calm, really, right? Be tuned in. I think that's the important point. And most importantly, see, there'll be a gap which will get created because of all the new privacy laws. It's not that the lower funnel conversions or digital marketing is going to go away, right? There will be people who will come in and fill that gap. One of the examples which are most talked about is the UID from UID 2.0 from Trade Desk, right? Which is going to be a consortium of people coming together and let's try to build a universal identity which everyone can plug in, contribute, and start leveraging out as well. So I think, net in my mind, it's right for us to be prepared, but wait for things to settle down. I mean, yes, the efficiencies will be impacted. I don't know whether it'll be 5% or 30% or even more, but there will be an impact. It's important for us to start preparing for that eventuality, but not necessarily panic. Sorry, long answer. That's what my view is.
No, that's a great answer. Thanks, Akash. So I have a follow-up question there. So you spoke of UID from Trade Desk, and there are other partners in the ecosystem that are creating their own identity solutions. So, do you think an alternate identity solution will scale and will give you what you have been expecting as a marketer?
So again, I can, I don't have an answer to that, Gaurav, let me be honest, right? But I think I'll tell you what I see directionally happening, right? I mean, everyone's going to start thinking, I mean, again, if you think it from the publishers or platforms perspective, everyone's going to think, how do I still attract more dollars, right? Make sure it doesn't go to TV, comes to more and more digital, right? So if that's the underlying driver, and again, as much as ever we say everyone cares about consumers, everyone cares about their business as well, right? If that's the direction, there will be an alternate solution which addresses this, sort of say data exchange in a safe manner. And, Chanpreet was talking about Flock and Fledge and all of that stuff, right? I mean, so there will be a solution. What will it be? I have no idea, right? I mean, I think directionally the Google's Flock and Fledge look interesting more at an aggregate level. The question that I keep asking myself is, will it still give me the lower funnel efficiencies that I get today? My current answer is no. The initial tests that I've seen from Google, they say they're able to get about 90-95% effectiveness as they used to get earlier. Again, it's all crystal ball gazing right now, and I can go on and talk about what are the other impact that I see in the industry, but I don't have an answer to say what it will be.
Great. Thanks, Akash. So Chanan, taking what Akash just said, that it's all crystal ball gazing, and he's not still very sure which way it will go. Do you think context will become the king then, or the queen, or whatever you like to call that?
Yeah, equal world, king and queen. So I think context actually became that a while ago again. We have been working around affinities, we've been working around keeping consumer at center. So context has actually been where the traditional marketing funnel changed to contextual funnel. When you were bringing them down, you were now bringing them down basis context. I think he has taken a very good attempt at giving all implications, etc. So I'll just try and bring a different point of view, which is a consumer point of view. So as a consumer, did I hate being followed around? Of course I did, right? So if I was to think of myself, there was so much, I was inundated with messaging just because I liked something or spent time somewhere, right? So is it in the right direction as industry? Do we, should we be moving towards more privacy? Definitely. Now, how does it impact brands, right? So for us, like you rightly said, efficiencies, because how are you going to ever be able to see if the person's been hit with a 3 frequency or 5, because you won't be able to see the journey, right? So ROI, which is a huge metric in most organizations, gets impacted that much more, right? And that's a concern. But like, again, we have to work on this as how will we solve for future, and keeping the same thing that as a consumer, I love what's happening on the privacy side. So if I have to move within this direction, I think there's a lot more that consumers will be willing to give you for a value. So for example, if you seek an email ID from me today, it is a rich data for me to give you, but then what is the value that you're giving me to have this exchange of information? And I think more and more brands will move towards a CRM approach, or will move towards an approach of a PII information, because then that will allow them to do the flock and fledge better. Right? Because flock and fledge will again be cohorts, but how will you choose the right cohorts will be through your own understanding of consumers, which you'll have to start building. So that's, I think, is an exciting thing. But then again, one will have to keep going back to the drawing board to think, what is the value that I'm giving to the consumer to seek this information? What is the value that I gave to her at the beginning of her journey? What am I giving it to her at the end of the journey? I think DSPs are now out from Amazon, Flipkart and all, right? I think there's a reason why that's happening. They're also understanding that their in-market audience now becomes a huge set. So to Akash's point, low funnel becomes a problem. Or does it when DSPs are there? So then if I was to think back as a marketer, I'll take the information from whoever can give me the information, right? And up until now, these were walled gardens. So you would never have e-com players or partners coming to you and saying, okay, data is now available for you. It was a complete like black hole, but now it isn't. So now they're coming out. So I think exciting time. Google will form partnerships. Facebook will form partnerships. These guys, there could be new power partners for all you know, where they'll have the richest source of data for brands to choose from. So again, definitely crystal ball gazing. But I think I'd really like the point of stay tuned in. There are different variations that I have started to see within J&J globally as well, right? So India being a more Chrome market versus Safari being more outside India. Now DBS is a different thing because it's a premium clientele, so probably more Apple. But for if you're again talking mass brand, I'm still talking Google, because India is 95% plus Google, right? So how is it going to impact different things, different brands, different audiences, premium versus non-premium? So I think exciting times. Looking forward to testing, learning, doing a lot of pilots, scaling those, working with partners. So that's my take on it.
Gaurav, if I may just add one point, and I love the point that Chanan said about no more power partners, right? And I think that's where probably there's also an opportunity for brands to start building a lot more intelligence in-house. Right. Yeah. I mean, look at it. The only two people, and actually there's a third one as well, who have a lot of information about customers is brands and power partners, without naming them, right? And if power partners are becoming, so to say, weaker, the only other, ecosystem player who has a lot of information about customers is the brands, right? Because I know what the end objective was, I know what worked, what messaging worked, and so on and so forth. So our ability to start building, investing in technology and intelligence to build possibly the same algorithms that power partners used to have in the past, and then leverage e-coms and some of the others, would be an interesting play as well.
Great. Thanks, Akash. Thanks, Chanan. So my last question, and that's for Centric. So we spoke of these identity solutions in play, and Akash and Chanan had their views on that. But if you see your ability to identify a consumer across different sites or applications is primarily in the hands of the browser, okay, which is Chrome, which is widely used in India, or Firefox, or or Safari, or the app ecosystem, which are again owned by Google and Apple primarily. Mostly in India, it's Android. So if an alternate identity solution has to be made, then all the large web entities, whether they are publishers or e-commerce companies, they have to come together to conform to a single standard. So, as a large OTT publisher, do you see yourself participating in such kind of initiatives, or as you said, you see many walled gardens come up when these policies are in effect? I mean, Apple is already has already implemented 14.5, but after the third-party cookies deprecate, what's your view on that?
So thanks. This is a really relevant question for us. So there are two perspectives. Okay, one, I'm going to take very Akash approach to it. One is what is my personal view. If I was to just say, listen, at the end of it, I really don't care because I have first-party data. I'm one of the 5 largest premium platforms with power users spending 43 minutes on an average daily with me. I have everything I need to know about that. But that is not the way we are going to win this. Not for our advertising partners, nor are we going to really, because we are all in the grow phase. We need to expand and we need to network. The challenge with coming together, Gaurav, and you know this, whether they are power partners or they're the giants, it's not equal. When everyone comes together, if there is actually equal sharing of data, that is different. If everybody is equally transparent, it's possible, but is it really happening? And that's going to be the question mark on who is going to take the initiative. The reality is that the traditional publishers who have now probably taken center stage on OTT platforms as well are not necessarily the only ones moving the needle in digital, right? You have Google, you have Amazon, you have Facebook, who are holding disproportionate amount of data. And what are they doing, or how are they contributing? We're talking about Google and Android market here, but A9 in US is now the third largest player, taking the lion's share of advertising revenue. Just the way Google made its first party data available for auction, so did Amazon. It's going to come, right? And I think the idea is that there's no level playing field there, and that's what it is. Let's call it as it is. So everyone needs to come onto a level playing field. However, in the meantime, I'll share with you what we are committed to doing. We are controlling the environment and making sure that context remains safe. Context remains premium, and context gives insight into consumer cohorts. While Flock and Fledge create their cohorts, we are an app. We are more than 90%. More than 90% of our users are on app. Okay, so for us, the web environment is less relevant, to be candid. And within the app, where we know our users, we are creating cohorts and we're creating context. And as brand safe publishers, we are committed to data partnerships as well. We've tried and got some really good results with Flipkart, DSP, and we are in exploration with others. The other aspect that we are exploring is to bring premium publishers together, where the brand safe environment actually extends, where we have no UGC, where we're probably looking at entertainment, sports, all produced content, where we have similar ad tech stacks, or at least we can have a common set of ad tech stack, which allows for the user data and for targeting across similar type of content for partners. So yeah, a lot of experiments, no answers yet. And everyone's a little guarded. I'll be very candid. This is, working with partners who have been who don't necessarily share data with each other and shouldn't. We're all very guarded about how it's going to work out, but we are committed to it. 1 year down the line, we'll know what's working, what's not working, but we're all trying.
Great. Thanks, Shanpreet. So thank you for that. So we've come to the end of the session. A lot of interesting perspectives. Around first party data, and going forward, more interesting partnerships, second party partnerships, and then how this landscape and ecosystem turns out to be in terms of identity. There is a lot to happen, and very exciting times for each one of us. I thank each and everyone for attending the session and giving your valuable time. Thanks Akash, thanks Shanpreet, and thanks Shannon for your time today.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for those insightful strategies. The data space is fraught with challenges, no doubt, and we can only hope to work together and minimize them in a consumer and privacy friendly manner. Thank you so much to all of you who have joined us today. If you have any questions for our panelists or for the Condé Nast teams, please do send them to sales@condenast.in and we will try and answer them for you. Thank you once again. Take care and stay safe.